Welcome into another episode of Destination the Show. This is episode 30. Jamie Cameron here with Jeremy Nygaard, as always. The date is March 27th. We are on the eve of opening day of the MLB season. Jeremy, how are you doing? Are you excited?
I mean, I feel good that spring training's finally over.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
I've never cared less about spring training than I do.
Yeah, I
this year.
agree.
Is it
Other
because
than
it's
Byron Buxton's health?
Oh yeah, that was fun. But it's like the only news I was getting was like Twins pitchers are hurt. Twins pitchers are hurt. We should get a new trainer. Like it was annoying for the last 6 weeks.
It was annoying. I agree. It took forever.
Other than that, hey, let's roll.
Are you ready for the overreaction that will befall us tomorrow if the Twins lose to the Royals and Cole Ragans pitches like a gem and Pablo gives up like 4 runs?
He's
going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be like, oh my gosh, the Twins can't hit left-handed pitching. It's gonna be
yeah.
And then there's gonna be like the he's going deep, and now who are we gonna bring in off the bench because it's the lefties on the bench, but he's not coming out. Yeah, it's gonna be chaos.
Yeah, I can't wait, dude. Brewers are already rained out, so they're not even playing. So
that means we take Friday off and we watch the opener.
There you go.
Friday's it's Good Friday, so why wouldn't you watch Jackson Chourio play his first Major League Baseball game?
That is a good Friday. Let's hit some housekeeping before we dig into all of the things. You can find us on YouTube at Destination the Show, on Twitter at DTS_pod1. Also, I keep forgetting we have an email. I want someone to send us an email. destinationtheshow@gmail.com if you want to hurl abuse at us. And you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. So we appreciate the support in advance. You can like, subscribe, give us positive reviews. Anything you can do helps the podcast grow, and we really appreciate it. Anything else you want to dig into, man, before we hit our topics for the week?
I just want you to talk about this next bullet point because this is what I'm very happy about. I'm happy for you, but I'm also happy for me.
Yeah.
Because this is super cool.
So we kicked off draft content a couple of weeks ago on the show, and folks who have listened for a while will know that I am in year 3 of a project of making a consensus MLB draft board where I essentially make a composite ranking of all the publicly available boards I can get my hands on. Last year, that ranks like 311 players, and I wrote up around 110 of those players in a Google sheet that I made publicly available for folks. It was well received. People seem to like it. And this year, it is coming to its own web page home at Twins Daily, Brewer Fanatic, Northside Baseball, and possibly one more place. So
I don't know about this 4th place. Whoa.
I think we're maybe getting Marlins as well in on the action. So the first version of this is going to be published on Monday. Brock Beauchamp, who does all the web development for all of those sites, is a real whiz, a real smart guy, and I have to give him a shout out for making it happen. What you'll find on Monday at all 3 sites is a first consensus ranking. It's the top 50. Every one of those 50 players has a pretty in-depth write-up, scouting report, etc. And the beauty of it this year is that because it's a web page, we can essentially update it in real time. So if I make a typo, we can update it in a minute. We can add 5 player profiles at a time, 10 player profiles at a time, move guys up and down incredibly easy. All of that was manual and really clunky last year. So I don't know exactly what the cadence is going to be, but I think it'll get updated probably every 2 weeks right now. And then as we get closer to the draft every week, and I'm sure in the home stretch every day, eventually we'll be at somewhere between 150 and 200 player write-ups for this draft, I think. But I hope it's a resource that folks enjoy. You've seen it, so you've seen a sneak peek of it. I think it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. So the thing that's super cool is that you and I hadn't talked at all like before the original consensus board, right? We like teamed up for the mock draft, but the consensus board was just kind of something that you did. And I've always, as a draft follower of all the drafts,
Yeah.
I want a list, right? But it's like I don't want to be skewed by what Keith Law thinks. I don't want to be
Mm-hmm.
skewed by what this person thinks. What I want is I want everything compiled into one nice list, and I want to have that. So I've tried to do that before, and it's basically like enter the number, do the average, print it off. You have your list, and then you just go and do it. And so last year I'm like, let's print that off, right? And so I got the paper sheets, and guys are getting drafted, and I'm scratching them off. So I'm excited for you because it's a ton of work, but now it's going to be in something that's way more manageable. And I'm excited for me because I get what I want without having to put in any time.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, that's right. And there's a bunch of things that are potentially cool that are kind of coming down the road with features, right? So we're toying around with the idea of making the write-ups collapsible as we add more. Brock's already added coding to it, so the Twins like logo populates next to the slots they're picking in. The same for the Brewers and the Cubs on those respective sites. Just like a ton of cool small features that I think folks will really enjoy. We'll find a way to track trajectory up and down for kind of major risers or fallers over time. So I think it's going to be great. If you see it and you enjoy it, I appreciate support that you can give, whether that's a retweet or sharing it or whatever. Any way that we're able to get it out there will help support the podcast, help support the board as a project, and help me keep doing it. And this is year 3, and it's kind of the first time it's a little bit more serious. So Monday morning, sometime at all 3 of those sites, should be out and available for people to check out.
Love it.
It's going to be fun, man. Okay, so today is opening day eve, and I think we've been a little lackluster about spring training and baseball so far. So we're going to get into some MLB stuff today. And I feel like, right, we're normally talking about the draft. We're normally talking about the minor leagues, but today we're going to spend the majority of our episode talking MLB predictions. And we're going to run through all of it. Division winners, wild cards, Rookie of the Year candidates, Cy Youngs, MVPs, do all that fun prediction stuff, because I don't think there's anything that can fire us up more for tomorrow and beyond than talking about how it might all wind up when it's all said and done. Before we do that, I got to get your thoughts on something which is top of mind for me, right? You just mentioned Jackson Chourio making his Major League debut on Friday. We're going to talk rookie impact players, right? So what I want to do is go through each team that we spend the most time talking about, Brewers, Cubs, and Twins. And we're going to we're going to put our money where our mouth is and suggest a player who we think is poised to make the most significant contribution to their organization as a rookie, right? So for each org, we'll give a guy, get a minute or two to kind of walk through your rationale, and then we'll revisit this at the end of the season to, look at how laughably wrong we were.
It's fair.
Although I feel like you are sneaky good at these type of games and predictions, so I'm a tad bit worried. And for the sake of keeping things interesting, we'll try and switch it up and not pick the same people for each team.
Okay.
So let's go alphabetical. Any questions before we jump in here?
Nope.
All right. So that's
do I get to start?
You can start. Yeah. Why don't we start with the Brewers?
So we'll start with the Brewers, and Jackson Chourio by far, and it's not even like just for the Brewers, but in really all of baseball, for me, he's the most exciting rookie. And there's going to be some other guys that are certainly up there, guys that debut later in the year. And I think there's some guys probably in that division that we're not going to talk about that I'm more excited about because pitching to me is the ones that I really like to watch. But
Yeah.
for Trio, knowing that he's going to be able to play every day, he's got that big fat contract, so he's going to get every opportunity to be successful. Did you read the thing about his elbow? Like he suffered an elbow injury when he was like 11 years old, and it
I
requires
did.
daily maintenance. Like that's a little troublesome to me. But I think it's probably going to be a slow start, and there's going to be people that are like, "Who is this guy? This isn't what we signed up for."
Mhm.
But by the end of the year, it's going to be super exciting. I personally would hope that the Brewers can stay in contention. I think that the NL Central is going to be really good. Uh, but whenever your team has the opportunity to add a really young dude that is considered one of, if not the best prospect in baseball,
Mhm.
uh, that's an exciting thing for the whole season, regardless of how that team does. So for me, Chiriot, but I do also really like the alternative here as
Yeah.
well.
So I love the Churro pick. Even though it's the obvious one, I agree 100%. And like the way the Brewers are positioned this year, they are really mired with injuries right now, especially to their pitching. And so I just love the idea of Churio learning on the job in a major league role in 2024 when the Brewers have a pretty wide range of outcomes. And maybe it's a bad season, but you know what? If it is, he gets to work out some of the kinks this year, and the Brewers are well poised to rebound in 2025 with Woodruff coming back, a number of their young guys developing. They have an incredibly young team and an incredibly inexperienced team. So I just love the aggressiveness of starting him out after that big contract extension. I'm gonna go a different direction just to keep things interesting. The Brewers' spring has not been smooth. It has been full of injuries and full of injuries to pitchers. The most recent of which today was that we found out that Robert Gosser has a bone spur in his elbow and is set to miss a decent chunk of time. Um, we don't know the timeline for that, but I'm going to go DL Hall. He's a guy that we've spoken about quite a bit coming over in the Corbin Burns trade. And I think he is maybe one of the most critical determining factors in how the Brewers season goes, right? He's moving into the starting rotation. We know this stuff is electric. It's a great fastball. It's a great slider. It's all pitches that grade out really, really well in Stuff Plus models. Can he throw enough strikes? Can he be consistent enough in the strike zone because his stuff is good enough to miss bats? If he can step up to the plate and be a solid, consistent starting pitcher for the Brewers, them staying in the race, I think, is a realistic possibility, as you mentioned, in an NL Central that like I don't really think there's a clear runaway winner, and maybe you feel differently. I'm curious if you do, but DL Hall is a big X factor to me for the Brewers, and while he might not kind of outvalue Jackson Churio, I do think he's incredibly important to the Brewers' chances.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. Moving on to the next team, and I'll go first again because I want you to go first on the Twins.
Okay.
So the Cub, and again, I said earlier, I've always liked pitchers,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, it's a hitter again, and it's Michael Busch,
Mm.
and for a couple reasons, acquired in a trade, um, has not necessarily flown under the radar, but hasn't been like this loud prospect.
Mm-hmm.
He can hit the ball. He can hit the ball with the best of them. Uh, but you mix this rookie in with a relatively veteran lineup with high expectations, and how regular is he going to be? I mean, I'd assume he's going to play a ton of first base. Uh, but then how he's going to be surrounded by other guys that can hit, right? So
Mm-hmm.
he should see fastballs, right? Uh, and he's a local guy, which is also makes this fun. Uh, and I think the Cubs will be very good, which also is going to put the spotlight on to players
Mm-hmm.
uh, like Michael Busch, who I mean, he's a top 100 prospect, but probably a little more under the radar because that Cubs system is just loaded.
So loaded.
And he's going to be the first one to be a regular out of this
Yep.
group. So
Yep.
I don't think expectations have to be super high. I don't think he has to hit, 260, 270, 280. But he's going to be someone that gets tons of opportunities and is going to make the most of them because all he does is hit. And so I'm excited about that one. He's not the most exciting prospect, but I think he's a rookie that can make a huge impact from day
Yep.
one.
I love that pick because the path to playing time thing is huge, and he has it. And I've I've gone in a different direction, and just followed who I want to see the most. I cannot tell you the amount of restraint it took me not to write Matt Shaw into our running order for this. I do think he's going to have an impact at the major league level in 2024. I went for Cade Horton, a favorite of both of ours. I think you in particular. Absolutely a top 3 right-handed starting pitching prospect in all of baseball. I think along with Paul Skeens and Jackson Jobe of the Tigers. The reason I think Horton is compelling is he's close, number one, and the Cubs don't necessarily have the type of upside that you want to see in a playoff caliber starting rotation. At the very least, we can say they have some question marks, right?
Yep.
Shota Imanaga has looked extremely good during spring training. He looks like he's going to be a stud. He's also never pitched in the majors yet. So we don't know what that's going to look like. Horton is the type and caliber of arm talent that can start a playoff game. I'm not saying he's going to be ready to start a playoff game in 2024, but that's the caliber of arm talent there. And so if he gets an opportunity, say in the middle of the season at the beginning of June and gets some run, I really like what he could do to impact the NL Central, which I agree with you. I think the Cubs are really well positioned to potentially to win that division, but at the very least it's close. And there's certainly no kind of runaway clear favorite for that division right now.
Yeah. And I think when we talk more about the Central, we can get a little bit deeper on that, but I think that what your last statement that there is no runaway favorite is very, very accurate and fun for another reason. We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
Next team, the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah.
I want you to go first.
Okay, you know what? I went pretty obvious with the Twins. Mine is going to be Brooks Lee. Spring training really doesn't matter, except when you give it meaning. But Brooks Lee looked excellent in spring training, in particular from the left side of the plate. We've talked on this podcast before about hitting as a right-handed hitter being an off-season focus, but the reality is he's going to get the majority of his at-bats as a left-handed hitter. He's an injury away from having regular time in a major league infielder. I don't think it really matters where that is. Could be second base, could be third base, could be anywhere. I don't think it really matters, but he performed really well in spring training. He knocked around some really good pitchers. I'm really curious to see what he looks like hitting right-handed. I think him starting with the Saints makes a lot of sense, but I think he's going to make short work of AAA. And he's just the most logical candidate in terms of the marriage of talent and a pathway to playing time on a Twins roster that is really chock full already of younger and emerging guys that are closer to the beginning of their major league career. Your Eddie Julians, your Matt Wallners, your Royce Lewises, who have barely had a full season. Brooks Lee is the most logical next impactful rookie for the Twins, in my opinion. Who's yours?
So I'm gonna throw a name out here that I don't think you would expect me to throw out. But in thinking about how this Twins roster is constructed, there's the opportunity potentially for some pitchers to make an impact. But I don't know that the high end impactful pitchers are going to come from the rookie class, right? Then so you're looking at hitters, and when you look around the diamond, there's not necessarily an opportunity for your guy, right? Which would happen on the left side of the infield, potentially second base. How first base ends up, I feel like it's going to be a lot of Carlos Santana, which I think is great. Agreed. He's old. You're going to set Alex Kirilloff there. Ryan Jeffers is going to hold down catchers. There's not really a rookie that could be there. So for me, it's like the most obvious place for a rookie to make an impact is in the outfield, right? For a number of reasons. Matt Wallner, maybe he struggles. Okay. Right. We could see that. Like there's the reality that Matt Wallner is not great. Byron Buxton has had a hard time staying upright. Right. And Kepler will be in right field. But the depth beyond that, Trevor Larnach in the minor leagues, one call away, but has had his opportunities. Austin Martin, right? Maybe. But if something were to happen and the stars align right, do you know where I'm going here?
I don't. This is the longest tease ever. I'm dying. I'm trying to figure it out in my brain. I can't.
Emmanuel Rodriguez starts hitting in Double-A.
Wow.
I think he's legitimately the guy that you look to. And as we've seen in the past, when you get hitters, especially with this wave that we've seen, the player development and getting guys ready and even promoting them from Double-A, that's not crazy. And so it's not the perfect world, right? But in the perfect world, Brooks Lee's not making an impact either. And so I just think there's a higher likelihood that it's going to have to come from an outfield player. And I think that he gets the opportunity. He's played well, right? He has his warts that I have certainly picked at repeatedly. But he's the type of guy on the 40-man, right? Why not? Why not give him a chance? We know what Trevor Larnach is, right? Willie Castro could be serviceable, but the depth in the outfield position is just not there. And part of me thinks is the reason that there's not a lot of depth there is because there's hope that this 21-year-old could come in and make an impact.
Wow. I feel like I've been hoodwinked, and you've been setting me up for this all off season, just ripping on Emmanuel Rodriguez. Here's this doubt. Here's this red flag, only to give this answer right now. That is not what I was expecting from you, I have to say.
I thought he would be a trade candidate. He wasn't. Right. And so, like I said, a lot of things will have to align properly or improperly for this to happen. But if the guy comes out in Double-A where it's going to be a little bit warmer, right, than Cedar Rapids, if he rakes, you give it a look, because I think he's the type of player that could be a high impact player. And there's not a lot of those guys knocking on the door, and the guys that are like Trevor Larnach have entered the door and then been stepped back out the door. And so you're going to be Austin Martin, sure, but Austin Martin's not going to be an everyday guy. And if you need an everyday guy, Emmanuel Rodriguez seems like it's possible. Now, is it probable? I would say no, but I think that there is the chance that he could make a huge impact on this team, and the team still be a good team.
Yep. I love that call from you, Theo. We're going to have to clip that and pause right before he says, is it likely no? And we'll just send it in. Yeah, 100%. I love that call. That's a bold call. I dig it. Seeing how Erod does at Double-A the first month or so of the season is going to be interesting. He's been historically a slow starter. We know about the contact rate, 68%. But is he just kind of figuring out what he wants to do in his plate appearances? It's a similar challenge to what Eddie Julian faced, right? Wanting to be a little bit more aggressive with stuff in the zone. So definitely plausible. And I dig it. That's a bold prediction. I love it.
But now here's the thing. If we know the Twins system pretty well, who are if we listed all the rookies last year, we could have come up with the three guys that were really, really good, right? To try to make that list this year, there's not a lot of guys because they all hit it last year. So Brooks Lee, yeah. Erod's a step away. Festa.
Yep.
Canarino's hurt right now. He would be an impactful guy if he was healthy, but he's been hurt. He is hurt. Who knows? Austin Martin, like I mentioned. Funderburk, who's already been there. Severino, who's I just don't see it. Who else? Like,
Margot. No one's super compelling.
so there's just not a long list to choose from. So I don't feel like I stepped like over a
Yeah.
whole bunch of guys to get to Erod. I feel like he's the best prospect who's closest
Mm-hmm.
after Brooks Lee.
Yep. That's fair. And you're right. We've kind of crested the wave last year, right? Of like a lot of rookies coming in and finding their feet. And it was a historic rookie class. And it's just, there's not the same number of guys. And who knows? Maybe someone steps forward who we haven't been talking about as much, or we didn't anticipate being as good as they end up performing. But I like that Erod shout.
Do you remember when Jorge Polanco got called up from Fort Myers?
I
Like,
do. I do remember that. I don't remember that going very well.
I think he had a triple like in one of his first at bats, I thought, but he didn't play much. And he got sent back down. But it's
Yep.
like he's the type of guy that I don't think coming with his background, I don't think there'd be like fear of playing
For
in
sure.
a big stadium.
For sure.
So I don't know. Is it going to happen? Who knows? But is it possible? Sure. And I think he could be impactful.
Love it.
Might strike out 30 times.
You're a convertee. You're on our team now, Jeremy. Welcome. All right.
I don't know about that.
Okay, so that's rookies. We're gonna move on now and do MLB predictions, right? So we don't usually dabble in the major league side of things as much, but it's the eve of opening day, so it seems only appropriate is what everyone's talking about. It's what we're all excited about. I'm gonna bring in Theo Tollefson for this portion of the show. Also, Theo, what's up? How are you, sir?
Doing all right. And yes, Jorge Polanco did have a triple in his second major league game. 2 for 6 in his short 5-game appearance back in 2014. And I thought it was very odd at the time.
That's wild.
I know. I'm sure it makes you guys feel old, but that also makes me feel old.
I know, Jeremy, when you said Carlos Santana is old, I was like, do you mean like approximately our age? Because that's the ballpark that we're living in.
What's funny is when Jorge Polanco made his debut, Theo was in 4th grade.
Let's move on quickly.
Actually, no, I was in 10th grade. I was going into 10th grade. It was that summer.
That's funny.
Wow.
Anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's what we're going to do for MLB predictions. It's the eve of opening day. We're going to pick everything just for fun. Beginning of the season, we can come back to it and laugh at ourselves after the fact, right? So we're going to start with division winners and wild card teams. We'll do National League first, American League second. We'll also pick a World Series winner, and then we'll do the individual awards. So we'll do Rookie of the Year, Cy Young candidates, and MVP for each league. Let's start with the National League East, because I feel like this might be fairly uncontroversial. Jeremy, who's your pick?
Braves.
Theo?
Braves.
For sure. Right? I mean, like, this feels like the biggest no-brainer, maybe of any of them.
And
Atlanta
West
Braves
might be the only other one that's a no-brainer. So
agreed. Atlanta Braves more than likely to repeat. NL West. Who you got?
So I'm going Padres. I think it's going to be a fun race, but the Padres eventually
That's crazy.
are going to at least perform to expectations, and I think that the expectations are a little bit lower this year. And I think Fernando Tatis is going to be an absolute freak, and they're going to be better. And so I'm taking the Padres.
Wow. I was gonna just like move past the NL West in like 15 seconds.
No, and after you make your picks, I'll tell you why I didn't pick that team.
Theo?
Dodgers. I mean, it's pretty obvious they are the juggernauts of the NL West. It looks like they're going to repeat once again with even just Shohei Ohtani as a hitter, despite everything that's happening to him off the field right now. And you got Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and Shohei Ohtani, who are going to be the most fearsome 3 in a row in the majors. And now, granted, Mookie Betts is playing shortstop for the first time in his career, which is going to be a challenge in itself. But the fact that he's 10 seasons in to his major league career and he's attempting shortstop is something to say about the caliber player he is. And the Dodgers starting rotation is probably one of the weakest it's been, but by the middle of summer, they're going to have Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw back. It's going to be their division to lose.
Walker Buehler back, Clayton Kershaw back, full season of Bobby Miller, Gavin Stone, I think, is going to fill in nicely on the back end of that rotation. They locked up their catcher to a 10-year extension today. Interesting money there. Dodgers to me also. But go ahead, Jeremy. Go off.
The Ohtani thing is going to be a huge distraction and a huge mess and cause way more in clubhouse issues than we'll ever know. I think the press conference was that yesterday, Monday.
Monday
was it?
Monday.
I think that was a good step in trying to fix things, but I just don't think it's going to be a good situation. And really good players have been on really bad teams, and Ohtani has been on those teams, and he's not pitching, he's just hitting, and maybe I it's not that I have the Dodgers not written down. I feel like there's going to be a lot of games that aren't won because there's just too much other stuff. And maybe the bright lights of LA, that's not a thing, but that's not where I'm from. And I feel like distractions in a mental game like baseball's so mental. And there's going to be all sorts of mental stuff happening in that clubhouse. And they're going to lose games that they shouldn't. And that's my thought. So I'm sticking Padres.
Right on. Hey, if you're actually right, man, you're going to get a ton of credit for that.
I will also make the counterpoint of the Padres are the exact team that has had those mental problems in the clubhouse recently. If you read that piece in The Athletic at the end of last season when their bankruptcy was filed, and you have all these superstars and they're just at odds with each other. Now, they've had a little bit of a shakeup in their roster, but it'll be very telling if they can overcome their own issues and if their rivals to the north will have what you are predicting.
Yeah, that's a bold prediction for sure. Okay, let's move to NL Central. I think it's fair to say that NL Central is the most interesting division in the National League, certainly the most competitive, wide range of outcomes, I think, for several teams in this division. Jeremy, who are you going with for the Central?
So I'll probably not take the same guys as you. I'm going Reds. And I think the vibe I get is similar to the Orioles from last year.
Okay.
Where they're young, they kind of don't know what they're dealing with, and they're just gonna play really well. I do think from top to bottom that division's gonna be the tightest, right? Like I want to think the Pirates are going to be super competitive, and so maybe they won't be this year, right? But like Paul Skeens is going to be a problem at some point. And so I have Reds coming out of that, but a close race from top to bottom.
Reds is a fun one for sure. Theo, who you got in the Central?
I think this is the division I've had to take the most time to pick someone to win it because it's just such a toss-up that pretty much everyone but the Pirates seems like they have a strong shot. And that's no downgrade of the Pirates because they are, I think, just another year away from being in that place where they can contend again, and I really would like that for them. But if I had to choose, and I think this is the one where we're going to have three different answers, I think the Brewers will make it back in to the same disappointing results as they usually do have, though. Win the division and probably get eliminated early in the postseason. Unfortunately, I think they do have more leadership stability than some teams with Christian Yelich. Now he is definitely, it's his team. I think I'm very high on Jackson Chourio, and I think Freddie Peralta, I don't know if he's going to win the Cy Young, but I think he's going to be in that top three rankings, and everyone else, whether it's DL Hall, Joey Ortiz, and just everyone else they have is just going to fill in. I think Rhys Hoskins, he's definitely that Brewer type. Now, one weird thing I found out about the Brewers a while back is they have not had the same first baseman for more than 2 seasons since Prince Fielder. It's crazy. So I hope that changes with Rhys Hoskins next year.
Brewers is such an interesting pick, and we are going to have 3 different picks for the NL Central, which is awesome. I think we've talked about this a bit, but Brewers are definitely both from like a feel standpoint and I think from a modeling standpoint are one of the teams that have the widest range of possible outcomes in the Central and in all of baseball. So it'll be really interesting. I think a lot of things have to break right for them, but they certainly have a shot. I'm going to go for the Cubs in the NL Central. Maybe that's a little bit of a boring pick, but I do think they had a quietly good offseason. They managed to re-sign Bellinger. Shota Imanaga looks like the real deal. Looks like he is a playoff caliber starter. Jeremy, you spoke a lot about Michael Busch being an impact everyday player. I thought that was a great trade for them, and sending Jackson Ferris to the Dodgers for Busch. Really logical swap for both squads. Hasn't been an explosive offseason for the Cubs, but I think they've quietly and effectively filled holes and added value. So I'll take the Cubs for the NL Central. 3 different picks. Okay, let's move on to NL wildcards. So 3 picks for the wildcards. Jeremy, who you got coming out the rest of the pack in the National League?
So I have your Central champ in the Cubs.
Okay.
I have your West champ in the Dodgers, and I have the defending NL champ in the Diamondbacks.
No Phillies.
No Phillies.
No Phillies.
Mm.
3 NL West teams you have coming out.
Mhm.
Okay. That's another bold prediction. Padres and no Phillies. Okay. Why do you hate the Phillies, Jeremy? People will want to know. They're going to start casting stones at you in Philadelphia.
I don't hate the Phillies. I think like every year it's going to be a tight race.
Mhm.
And I think the Braves win that division by so much. Harper's dinged up already, right? Could the Phillies make it? Sure. Could teams make big splashes at the trade deadline? Absolutely. But I wasn't going to take the Diamondbacks out. I think they're way better than they were last year when they went to the World Series. Despite the fact that I think the Dodgers are going to have distractions, I think they're going to win enough to make the playoffs. And I think the Cubs will come out of a tight race. I think it's going to be a very tight race. I mean, the Brewers could be in that race as well. But those are the teams I went with.
Right on. Theo, how about you? 3 NL wildcard teams.
I think the Phillies are obvious for me. Diamondbacks, especially with the addition of Montgomery. Now he still might be out for 2 to 3 weeks just to warm up and like get in the rotation. But with both him and Eduardo Rodriguez, that's such a strong 2 lefties to have in the rotation. And like Merrill Kelly can like trickle down to the 4th spot in that rotation, which is huge. And the one thing they were missing to really make it a competitive World Series last year was starting pitching. So Phillies, Diamondbacks, and I think I'm going to have it balanced out from one from each division, and also say the Cubs as well, because they missed out just barely, and I think they're coming back with a vengeance to make sure they get into the postseason this time around. And their prospects are well balanced that I think they're going to make that push, especially we got to root for the homeboy with Michael Busch too. So
like those picks a bunch. Mine are close to yours, actually, Theo. So Phillies, 100%. They're like a lock for me for a wild card spot. There's just too much talent on that roster not to be a factor. Also, Diamondbacks. I felt like the Diamondbacks have had a fun and interesting offseason. The addition of Montgomery, as you mentioned, Theo, really pushes them over the edge, gives them another playoff caliber starter. That whole NL West is going to be interesting, though, because every team, except Colorado, did something pretty interesting. Like the San Francisco Giants made a bunch of interesting additions. Like I think you could make a case for any of those teams making the playoffs via the wild card, with the exception of maybe the Dodgers, who are clear divisional favorites. And then the Reds, I think, are going to be my last one. I have seen a lot of projection systems have the St. Louis Cardinals as first or second in the NL Central. I just don't see it. I don't love what they did with their rotation, adding Sonny Gray, who's starting the season on the injured list, Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson. These rotation additions do not excite me. The Reds' young talent does a ton, so I'm going to go for Cincinnati for my 3rd wild card. Okay. We are on to individual awards for the National League. Anyone want to take a stab at National League Rookie of the Year? We might clash here, guys. I have a feeling.
I don't know that we're going to clash. I would love to take someone other than Jackson Chourio for the sake of argument. I think Jackson Merrill is going to finish second, but I think it's Chourio, and hopefully he gets MVP votes. That would be the most fun thing as a Brewer fan, right? he's getting those. He probably won't this year, but I think as far as the competition, I don't see a ton of it. But Jackson Chourio for me, hands down.
Theo?
I'm really high on Paul Skeens. I think he's going to be such an impact for the Pirates and make enough noise. I think he's going to have a better impact than Garrett Cole did his rookie year in 2013 with the Pirates, and that he will definitely be their X factor to push them into the postseason next year, not this year. So I'm sold on him, which maybe I'm buying a little too high in that stock, but I'm okay with it. I want something good for Pittsburgh this year.
Yeah,
That's
for
fun.
sure. Skeens is such a fun pick. I think I would love to be able to agree with you. I just feel like the runway is so much shorter, both as a starting pitcher and starting the season at AAA. And he should make short work of AAA, but with Chourio starting as an everyday player, he's going to be accruing value all of April and however long of May, June it takes for Skeens to get up. So I agree. I'm super excited to see him. He was definitely a name I consider, but I also went with Chourio, even though that might be a little bit of a boring pick. That's huge potentially for the Brewers if Chourio wins, because they would get a PPI pick in the 2025 draft class, which is shaping up to be a pretty strong one.
When does the consensus draft board 2025 draft board? Soon?
Not until next. Ask me again next winter. Okay, let's move on to NL Cy Young. Anyone want to lead us off here? Who's bringing home the hardware?
I've had one guy I really wanted to see win it for years, and he's always disappointed. And this is the last year I keep telling myself this will be the last year I pick him. He got a huge contract this offseason, the biggest out of any starting pitcher in this market. Aaron Nola. Yes. I really think he'll finally bring that ERA down below 4. He will, I think Zach Wheeler, as great as he's been for the Phillies, I think age is going to slightly catch up to him, and this will be Nola's year to lead that rotation and keep them in contention for that wild card spot and maybe upset the Braves once more for a third straight postseason.
Wow.
Aaron Nola, bold pick.
I'm gonna stick with the Braves and take Spencer Strider because I think that's just kind of the easy pick to make. But I feel like Zach Gallen might do his thing too. So Strider's my pick, but I'll give you my runner up, and that's Zach Gallen.
Right on. I like that pick. Gallen is a good one too, for sure. I'm going to keep it with the Phillies, but a teammate who also signed an extension this offseason, Zach Wheeler, is my pick. Simply has been the most consistently excellent starting pitcher in baseball over the past 5 years. I think that division is a little bit weaker this year with the Mets not being too exciting. So I'm going to go with Wheeler for NL Cy. All right, last but not least, before we move on to the AL, NL MVP. Who you got, folks?
Well, I'm going to stick with my Padres are going to be a great pick and take their best player, Fernando Tatis.
Hard to argue with that. How about you, Theo?
If he can succeed in his move to a new position, it has to be Mookie Betts. I mean, I've been rooting for him to be the second player in the history of Major League Baseball to win MVP awards in both leagues. And if we want to talk about underrated legends, Frank Robinson has definitely been one of those. And I want Mookie Betts to join him in that elite company of guys who are superstars in their era. But as history moves on, they might be underappreciated. And we do that a lot with Frank Robinson, especially considering he was the first Black manager in the majors and just everything he did. But, you know, he was in the shadow of Willie Mays, Hank Aaron in that era and whatnot. And I feel like Mookie's kind of in that shadow a bit right now with Shohei, whether you consider his superstar status as a player and what is happening off the field with him. But if you're talking about a guy who's just entered his age 30 season or 31, was it? He's in his early 30s still, and he's making the move to shortstop on that alone. That alone should give him MVP as long as he succeeds. It's still going to be a tough transition, and there will be errors. I'm not expecting him to be, you know, Ozzie Smith out there. He's going to be more like Derek Jeter when it comes to his fielding numbers. But hey, Jeter was second to Justin Morneau for MVP one year.
What you grinning at, Jeremy?
I wonder how a transition from a spot to the most difficult spot, how that's going to impact him offensively. If it's not great defensively.
Mm-hmm.
The most likely scenario is Dave Roberts says go back to the outfield and be just fine. But I don't know. It's a tall ask, and it's so tall that it's an ask that nobody has ever made before for anybody, right? You move off shortstop, you don't move back. He didn't even freaking play shortstop in the minors. He's a second baseman.
Mm-hmm. Moving
And
up
so,
the defensive spectrum is not normal.
so that's my hesitation there. And like you say, the Dodgers, they got all these guys, but what the Dodgers don't have is a shortstop. That's kind of a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will be interesting to track for sure. Mookie Betts was also my pick. Not going to add much more there. Tatis is certainly a good shout, though. Let's move on to the AL. Start with the AL East. Interesting division. A lot of strong teams. Always an absolute gauntlet. Who do you guys have coming out of the AL East as the division winner this season? Jeremy, let's start with you.
I'm going to throw this team out because I hate them more than anything. And if they win the division, I can say at least I picked them. I'm going to take the Yankees back on top of the AL East. Soto, like you throw him
Not
into
bad.
that, and I don't know if their pitching is going to be good at all. Over 162 games, so I think that their offense will be good enough, and their pitching will just be enough to win that division. I think that it's going to be super competitive, like it always is.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to take the Yankees just to spite them.
Yep. Right on. Theo, how about you?
I picked the Yankees just to spite them last year, and they finished in fourth. And I hope Jeremy has the same luck I had last year just to do that. But I can't do that this year because I really like what Baltimore did in getting Corbin Burns. They could have done a lot more to help themselves, but Corbin Burns is exactly who they needed at the top of the rotation. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going to win 100 games again. I think they're still going to win the division with like 96, 97. And I mean, that AL East is just the juggernaut of all divisions where everything is just crazy at the top. And at least the Red Sox will try, unlike the Rockies. And that's what makes the AL East better than the NL West. So,
yep. I'm also going to go with Baltimore. I agree with you, Theo. I found their offseason a little half-baked, especially with the Kyle Bradish injury. They got Burns, which is great, but I just like get a pitcher. They're still so loaded with prospects, even after the Hall Joey Ortiz trade. They have Colton Cowser, who had like a 938 OPS at AAA as their fourth outfielder. They have guys in that org who don't have a clear pathway to playing time, and I would like to see them be more aggressive with pitching. All that said, the amount of young borderline superstar players they have on their roster is ridiculous. So I'm going to double down with you, Theo, and go Baltimore. How about the AL West? Defending World Series champs Texas Rangers here, along with Houston Astros, Seattle Mariners, maybe have the best rotation in baseball. Who you got coming out the West, guys?
I went with the Astros. I feel like every late season it's the Astros, right? And I'm not against the Rangers, and I love Mitch Garver, and so I would love for the Mariners to be awesome. But it just no matter what, it always seems to come up Astros. It drives me crazy, and I can't pick against them.
Yep, it's fair. Theo, how about you?
I can pick against the Astros. I think the end of their dynasty is reaching. It's reaching its time because I mean the Rangers got the better of them in the ALCS, which was probably the most entertaining postseason series outside of the one we saw in person. Jamie, I'm going to go with Seattle because I'm such a big believer in their starting rotation. I think Julio Rodriguez. I mean, he had a phenomenal second half, piss poor first half, but he's put all these expectations upon himself, and he's becoming a young leader for that team, and he's only 23 years old. I don't think he's going to win MVP, but I think he's going to take that next step to really lead that offense. And, to see Mitch Garver get back in the postseason, even though he's going to be their primary DH, that would be fantastic. I think Seattle, again, another team that missed out on the postseason last year and really wants to come back after ending their postseason drought in 2022.
Mariners is such a fun pick. Really excited to see how Jorge Polanco does over there. Offense is going to be the story, I think, with that team. Once again, we have 3 different teams. This is fun. I'm going to pick the Rangers. Defending World Series champs, their offense is just downright scary. You have Seager, Simeon, Evan Carter, Wyatt Langford, who has probably been the most impressive hitter in baseball during spring training. Now we acknowledge that doesn't really mean anything, but he sure looks Major League ready. Just an absolutely stacked offense. If there's any worries with them, I think it's their depth. Pitching is fine. They'll get DeGrom and Scherzer back at some point in the middle of the season. But the offense is an absolute juggernaut for Texas. So expecting them to get back this time as a division winner. Okay, last but not least for divisions, AL Central. I saw a fan pick that had the Kansas City Royals winning the Central today from MLB on Fox, which is interesting. Jeremy, who you got for the Central, man?
I have the
Royals?
Twins. I have the Twins with 83 wins.
Ooh, rough. 83. Okay. Theo, how about you?
They're going to win more than that, Jeremy. I think they're going to win 91 games and win the division. Yeah, so let's go Twins. And also, I just want to show off the new Summit Pills, Twins Pills logo. I mean, look at that. Look, it's got the nice cream color pinstripes.
It's very nice.
And the new logo. I like it more than the old one. Shout out Summit. Not looking for sponsorship, by the way. Just got to put it out there. Just want to show off the can. No. I mean, yeah, it's going to be the Twins. And I think everyone who's like, "Oh my God, the Royals spent big. They're gonna make some noise." They won 56 games last year. They got a long way to go, even if they've had some vets. The only team that's gonna be like close is Detroit. I think it's fair to say Detroit will probably finish in second with like 80 to 83 wins.
The weird thing about the Kansas City Royals being the trendy pick in the Central, because they spent some money, which I applaud them for doing. It's not something the Twins did this offseason. But the reason that's strange to me is it's not that it's weird to predict the Twins not winning. It's just that it's so obvious that the Royals are the 4th best team in the division, very clearly behind also Cleveland and Detroit in some order, and you can quibble over what that is. I like Detroit a little bit better than Cleveland too. So I don't understand Royals team. I like the Twins. I do think the AL Central is tight. Twins bullpen is a little bit beat up at the moment. I think Detroit's going to be interesting and take a step forward. Their young pitching has been interesting in spring. So we'll see if they can put together some consistency when the season kicks off here. Okay. AL wildcards, guys, need 3 from each of you. Jeremy, you want to kick us off?
Orioles, who we've heard, Rangers, who we've heard, and I'm going to go with the 3rd team from the East in the Tampa Bay Rays because I never know how they do it, but they always seem to do it. And
For
so
sure.
I could name only a handful of their players, and yet they're going to be in contention and probably get that 6th spot. And who knows what'll happen. I just, like I said, I have a hard time betting against the Astros. I have a harder time betting against the Rays. So Rays, Royals, Orioles.
How about you, Theo?
Rays, Blue Jays, and Rangers.
So I'm going to do something risky and probably foolish and bet against the Rays making it back to the postseason, which it's probably not a good idea, right? I'm going to go Yankees, Astros, and Mariners. I really like the AL West this year. I think both those teams are pretty competitive. Yankees obviously have added Soto. Probably a mistake to pick against the Rays because, Jeremy, as you say, they always find a way. But that's what I'm going with. Yankees, Astros, and Mariners for the wild cards. All right, real quick. A World Series winner from you guys before we do AL awards. Who's feeling bold? Who's gonna win it all? I know we got strong feelings.
We haven't talked about like our pennant winners, or did we do that?
No, we haven't.
Okay.
We need the matchup before we pick a winner.
Okay, so let's do pennant winners and who's bringing home the World Series.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're
So
first.
I'm gonna take an all wild card World Series,
Ooh.
and I'm gonna take the Baltimore Orioles,
Okay.
who will be healthy enough and will mature enough through the season with their younger dudes, over the not quite Buffalo Bills yet, Arizona Diamondbacks, losing their second straight World Series.
Ooh. Rough. Okay. Interesting. I like it. Theo, how about you?
I got the Orioles in there as well, but I have a rematch of World Series we have seen, not in any of our lifetimes, but that has happened. 1966 rematch between the Orioles and the Dodgers. And I think the Dodgers win this time.
Like it. Okay.
Is Ohtani suspended for life by then, or
We're not going to touch that.
okay?
We're going to let this thing play out.
Okay.
There's so much unknown. I think despite,
go ahead.
I'm going to say this now, despite what happens to Ohtani, I think they'll still make it in. So.
Okay.
I'm going to also have one wild card team making the World Series for me. It's going to be the Seattle Mariners. I love the rotation. Yep. I love the rotation. I'm counting on the offense finding some consistency and MVP season from Julio Rodriguez. But I'm going to have them losing the World Series to the Atlanta Braves. It's difficult for me to see and get past the Braves, just the level of depth, the level of quality that they have locked up in their major league roster for like the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years, I think gives them a good shot pretty much every year. So Braves over Mariners in the World Series for me. Last but not least, AL award winners. This one maybe is one of my favorite categories for a discussion. AL Rookie of the Year. Some really interesting candidates here. Jeremy, who you got?
I'm gonna take Wyatt Langford because he's gonna get the opportunity to do it over all 162 games.
Okay.
Even though I think Jackson Holliday, if afforded the same opportunity, could make that a very tight race. So Langford over Holliday for me, with Evan Carter being a sneaky pick in there as well.
Okay, like that. Theo, how about for you?
Evan Carter is my pick. I think all the pressure is going to be on Wyatt Langford, that he's going to build off that experience in the World Series that we saw in the postseason. He was on fire, and with everything being on Wyatt Langford with the microscope, Evan Carter, again, he's going to have the same 162 opportunity as well in that outfield. So I think he's going to sneak up on his teammate and take it. And I think it would be very interesting to see for, like, I can't even remember the last time we saw Team H finish first and second in Rookie of the Year voting. It might have been 2006 with the Marlins. Hanley Ramirez and Dan Uggla. I'm gonna have to look this up.
That's usually the question that we ask and don't know, and you look up sneakily.
I'm gonna look this up while you describe your pick.
I love the Evan Carter pick. I think that's a great one. I love that he got his feet wet in the postseason last year. As you say, he was great. He has the speed dimension there too. I'm going to deviate because my initial thought was Langford, but I'm not picking the same guy as Jeremy. I can't agree with Jeremy. That's not going to work for me.
I'm wrong.
Say again.
You like to be wrong.
I'm going to go Jackson Holliday, and here's why. 100%. Langford has the runway and deserves to be the favorite based on the spring, based on his minute in the minor leagues that he had last season. But I think Jackson Holliday is going to be up extremely soon. Like, we're going to see him in the majors in May. He is going to get regular playing time in that infield. That Orioles team is going to be a really, really formidable offense. And I think he's going to be a big part of that. So I'll pick Jackson Holliday to stack up against Langford for you, Jeremy, and Evan Carter.
So how many, what's the PPI rule? Like, can they still get, Holiday's got to come up pretty quickly to get a draft pick, right?
Yeah. I know we've talked through this on several episodes, but I don't have it in front of me, but you can meet it in a number of different ways. Essentially, you have to have a certain number of days of service time over the course of the season to be eligible. And I'm sure they will be monitoring that closely because the Orioles just received a PPI pick for Gunnar Henderson winning Rookie of the Year. So That's something they've already benefited from, and I'm sure they'll be keen to do so again, given that they're starting to pick near the end of the first round with consistency instead of what they were doing for 5-6 years in a row, which was picking in the top 5.
You can't trade those picks though, right? You can only trade the comp picks.
Correct.
right,
Okay,
so-
AL two more. AL Cy Young. Jeremy, who you got?
From the World Series champions, formerly of the Milwaukee Brewers, Corbin Burns. And it's going to prove to be a great trade for the Orioles and a not great trade for the Brewers.
Okay. So you're not excited about DL Hall and Joey Ortiz? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm intrigued by Hall.
Okay.
And I think Ortiz will be serviceable. But Corbin Burns is the top of the top.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got to get it together and get it done in the playoffs. And I think he will do that with a really, really, really rock star team behind him.
Yep. Right on. I can see it. Theo, your pick for AL Cy Young.
Real quick, I did look it up. So actually, 2 years ago, it was Michael Harris II, and then Spencer Strider, who finished first and second. And then before that, it was still the Braves with Craig Kimbrell and Freddie Freeman in 2011. So we're due to see another team have their rookies finish 1-2 in voting. I'm going to be the homer. Pablo. I think Pablo's going to win it. He's got the easiest division when it comes to who he's going to face the most often, who has the weakest lineups. I mean, I think it's safe to say the Twins have the best lineup in the American League Central, and the rest of them, I mean, Cleveland's got Jose Ramirez, Kansas City's got Bobby Witt Jr., but like, who fills out the rest of those lineups? And then with Detroit, I feel like Mark Canha's the most proven major leaguer at this point. Javier Baez is completely washed, and Riley Green still has to prove himself. And, Dan Hayes has had a very excellent piece that came out earlier this week on, what had him go to the next level in 2023. And I think, the presence he's had to meet with the last Cy Young winner with the Twins and his childhood hero who won his first Cy Young Award 20 years ago in Johan Santana, it's too good not to pick. I mean, I think any Twins pitcher for the Cy Young pick has been foolish before. I mean, since Johan until now. So I think I just have to go with it.
That's a fun one. That would be extremely exciting. I'd love it.
So I'm gonna hot take this one and say that Pablo Lopez doesn't even finish first out of the 2 starters tomorrow in the Cy Young race.
Whoa. Okay, you got to stop with the Cole Reagan stuff. I think he's
gonna be super good, and they're both be top 5, I think this year. But yeah, I would love it if I was wrong about that. I would love for Lopez to be the Cy Young.
Okay. 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 15 seconds is when Jeremy said that. Okay. Yeah,
I'll know that.
Can't get on board with that one. I like Pablo. I'm actually gonna agree with Jeremy as much as it pains me. Corbin Burns is my pick too. Change the scenery. The Orioles, just like the Brewers, to be fair, are great at player development and communication around player development, expecting a big season from Corbin Burns. He absolutely has to be one of the top 2 to 3 front runners with Garrett Cole out of the mix, which is interesting and certainly opens the door for him and Pablo and others. Last pick, y'all, and then we've done everything, is AL MVP. Any strong feelings about this one? Jeremy, let's start with you.
So I took the Yankees to win the East on the back of Juan Soto. I think Juan Soto wins AL MVP in his debut in pinstripes.
Is he going to be in pinstripes after this season?
Probably not.
Okay.
But he'll do it this year. He'll win the MVP.
That's all I needed to hear. Theo, how about you?
My AL MVP pick is also coming out of the AL East with my division winner, Adley Rutschman.
Wow.
I think he finally takes that next step to be an MVP, and it's been 15 years in the American League since newly minted Hall of Famer Joe Mauer won it, and then 12 years ago since any catcher won the MVP and Buster Posey. We're just due, and I think he's going to be the one to take that step and be the leader for the Orioles. And I I'm really excited to see how he works with a veteran starter in Corbin Burns, because again, the majority of the pitchers he worked with outside of Kyle Gibson in the first 2 seasons of his career have been, just early in their careers like he has. So I think really having that superstar starter and seeing how the two of them work dynamically. And for me, I just can't pick like 2 award winners from the same team. So that's why I can't get on board with Burns when Rutschman's going to be my MVP pick.
Right on. Adley Rutschman. That's a fun one. Mine's going to be Julio Rodriguez. He just screams being right there to me. The Mariners lineup is more interesting this year, I think, than last year. They have a few ads there, right? Jorge Polanco, Mitch Garver, Mitch Haniger, to give him a little bit of protection. He can accrue value in every possible way, right? He hits for decent average. He hits for good power. He steals bases. He's a really good center fielder. So Julio Rodriguez is my pick. If the Mariners are going to go to the World Series, he's going to need to do it. He's going to need to turn it on. So that's who I'm rolling with. Gentlemen, that's all the predictions. So in 6-7 months time, we can come back to this and keep score and loser owes dinner maybe or something. I don't know.
I got one quick shout out to the Twins communication team for sending me this bad boy in the mail. Got it today. Something to read. I love meeting you guys, man. They're just so fun.
How'd you get your
hands on that? We could get some additional ones. That'd be great.
I'll tell you guys afterwards.
Okay, right on. All right, we're at about time. Hope everyone enjoyed that. Excited to finally kick off the 2024 season. As always, we appreciate any ways that you can support the podcast. We will be back next week with a first dig into the 2024 MLB Consensus Draft Board. Until then, enjoy opening week.
And if you have the time, catch us at Forgotten Star. If you listen to this early enough, we will all be there at some point tomorrow. And if you don't listen to this early enough, you missed out.
You missed us.
Forgotten Star. See you guys there. All right, later.